And welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I'm Anne Nwawadu. We begin the program in Russia, and officials have confirmed the Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin has died after genetic analysis of the bodies found in Wednesday's plane crash. The investigative committee said the identities of all 10 victims had been established and corresponds to those on the flight's passenger list. The private jet crashed 2 months to the day after Prigozhin led an abortive mutiny against Russia's army top brass. President Vladimir Putin also described that mutiny as a treacherous stab in the back, but later met with Prigozhin in Kremlin. He sent his condolences on Thursday to the families of those the aviation agency said had died in that crash. Many people have been reacting to the confirmation of Prigozhin's death by Russian investigators. Those visiting a makeshift Wagner memorial in the center of Moscow on Sunday said the group founder was a real hero. Russia's aviation agency had previously published the names of the 10 people on board that private jet, which crashed in the Tver region northwest of Moscow. They included Prigozhin and Dmitry Utkin, his right-hand man, who helped found the Wagner group. A Russian investigative committee said on Sunday that the result of genetic tests had confirmed the identities of all 10 who died in that crash. The second ship has left Ukraine's port city of Odessa since Moscow's withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal. Ukrainian lawmaker Oleksiy Hocharenko says the Liberia-flagged bulk carrier Primus was set to sail from Bulgaria. Primus is moving from Odessa to the port of Varna in Bulgaria. Odessa's 3 seaports shipped tens of millions of tons of grains during Russia's invasion under a UN-brokered deal, which of course collapsed in July this year after Moscow withdrew from that deal. Russian forces have since targeted Ukrainian ports with volleys of missiles and drones. In the meantime, the Kremlin is dismissing the prospect of renewing the Black Sea grain deal as a second Ukrainian ship passes through the temporary corridor. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says the prospect for a renewal depends on the actual implementation, not just in words or the promises given to the Russian side. According to him, this means implementing the part of the deal pertaining to Russia. But earlier this month, Kiev announced a humanitarian corridor in the Black Sea to release cargo ships that have been trapped in its ports since Russia invaded Ukraine. But Peskov said the temporary corridor is a totally different matter to the grain deal, and the Defense Ministry is already monitoring as necessary. On Sunday, a vessel carrying steel products to Africa was the second ship to leave through the new corridor. President Zelensky says that Westerners calling for Ukraine to hold elections already during the conflict with Russia should be prepared to pay millions of dollars and take risks on the front line and ensure the ballots are legitimate. Speaking during a television interview on Sunday, President Zelensky announced and addressed criticism in the West over the suspension of democratic processes in Ukraine, suggesting a price tag for holding a presidential election next year. The Ukrainian leader especially referenced comments by U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham during his visit to Kiev last week. Elections cannot currently be held in Ukraine under martial law, which must be extended every 90 days and is next to expire on November the 15th. That's after the normal date in October for parliamentary polls, but before the presidential elections, which will normally be held in March 2024. Crowds of German citizens have rallied in Düsseldorf to the capital city of North Rhine in Westphalia, the most populous state of Germany, to denounce Western countries for escalating the Ukraine crisis by supplying Ukraine with weapons. The protesters held banners and placards reading, "We want peace, no war," demanding the United States and other Western countries to immediately stop sending weapons to Ukraine. They denounced North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, for wrongly waging wars around the world for their own interest. The potential delivery of more weapons has aroused strong concerns among the protesters in Germany, and with many citizens criticizing the German government of escalating tensions abroad while neglecting its own domestic problems.
I think NATO has been waging wars in their own interests all over the world during the last decades. They invaded Libya, they invaded Afghanistan, they invaded Iraq.
We do not consent to the German government sending heavy weapons into a hot war zone, because weapons do not create peace. They only prolong and increase the human suffering in Ukraine. We want Germany to undertake diplomatic initiatives and to stop sending heavy weapons.
We have a lot of problems, economic problems here now in Germany. That's why I'm also here by the protest.
Working as an investigative reporter in Russia, Russian journalist Elena Kostachenko says you always have to be very careful. Despite the murders of 4 of her colleagues for their reporting, Ms. Elena never conceded she had been poisoned when she fell ill on a train to Berlin. German prosecutors are investigating whether Elena, who is now living in hiding, was a victim of an attempted murder when she became ill last October. Her symptoms started with disorientation and then stomach ache on the train journey from Munich to Berlin, persisted for several weeks. And by the time she realized she may have been poisoned, it was too late to identify any toxins. In the past, enemies of Russian President Vladimir Putin living abroad have been poisoned, including former secret agent Sergei Skripal, who survived, and then Sergei Litvinenko, who did not. Well, a former Chechen rebel died in Berlin in what a German court said was a Russian state assassination. However, the Kremlin denies any involvement in these killings.
I decided that I would go public, so I would raise the cost, of assassination attempt, because one case, then you just die because of, unknown illness, and it's such a story. And I approached some Russian doctors and some Israeli doctors, and they also got no idea. So, and also my symptoms were changing during that time. My pain in stomach got less, and I got less dizzy, but my face started swelling, and then my fingers, and I had to take off my rings, because my fingers looked like sausages, and it fitted for Putin's narrative, but we can't forgive traitors. And of course I can understand how secret services can consider Litvinenko and Skripal as traitors, but I was never working with secret services. I'm an independent journalist, so somehow I was thinking that in Europe, I'm safe. When you work as an investigative reporter in Russia, you are always careful. You have lots of protocols you're following all the time. You know how to communicate with people, how to approach people, how to travel between cities, how to do things. But then I found out myself in Europe, I totally forgot about all these security measures. Then I discussed my trip to Munich. I used Facebook Messenger, for Christ's sake. It's totally unsafe, channel for communication, but somehow it just didn't appear in my head that I can be here at risk too.